what's up everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to get hit with the truth. So today we are doing the what's next on Zhilei Zhang, the WBO Interim Heavyweight Champion of the world, following his destructive third round knockout victory over Joe Joyce in their rematch as he retained the WBO heavyweight title. Now, before we get into that, if you could smash the like button, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. I really do appreciate any and all support that I can get as I continue to build my channel here. So, Zhilei Zhang, the man. This guy, I mean, what an impressive fucking knockout. You know, my language is warranted in this one. This guy, at 40 fucking years old, to go out and knock out the guy that was the most feared fighter. I mean, it was one thing to beat him the first time. You could argue Joe Joyce was overlooking Zhang. That's why he got beat. And you could also argue it was just Zhang landed some good shots that swelled up Joe Joyce's eye pretty bad. Good arguments, both of them. But to come out and not only win the fight, but win it so overwhelmingly by knockout, clean knockout, and then he did it on a right fucking hook. Excuse me. Which is the point, which is an interesting punch in this fight. And I'll tell you why. Because Joe Joyce, the plan, and I called this, I said he needs to move to his left to avoid the left hand of Zhang, because that fucking ate him up, swelled up his eye, and dominated him in the first fight. So he needs to move to the left. What does Zhang do? He makes the adjustment by throwing the right hook, but Joe Joyce's problem, though, started after the first round. Yes, he got hit with a couple shots in the first round, but it was a close first round. His problem was that he stopped moving after the first round, because in the first round, he was doing a good job of moving to his left. He was. They even said it, hey, he's moving to his left. And then he stopped moving to his left. And that was, you know, Joe Joyce is not a big mover. And Zhilei Zhang zeroed in on him, started landing shots in the second, and then in the third round, he continued, and then it was the right hook that dropped Joe Joyce, and Joyce was done, you know, and it was just an impressive knockout victory for Zhilei Zhang. And now the big question is, what's next for Zhilei Zhang following that victory? Well, what we do know now is that Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk have signed on for a deal that is exactly the same as Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford did. The loser, that was reported today by Dan Raphael on ESPN, the loser the loser, it has the option of activating a rematch clause. I'll tell you right now, Zhilei Zhang and Filip Hrgović might get fucked over. But then again, not. So, we'll get into that as we get into each fighter in the top 10 for Zhilei Zhang, because we're going to run through the top 10. And so let's start at the top. The number one, the undefeated WBC champion, Tyson Fury, the king of the heavyweight division. Not going to happen next. Tyson Fury's fighting Usyk either in December or January, or depending on how much recovery time he needs. So, with the rematch clause in the contract, Alexander Usyk might cash out and take a rematch depending on how the first fight goes. He might be like, hey, I want to take the rematch. I'll fight Tyson Fury again. So Zhang is just going to be left out in the cold, and he's not going to get a crack at Fury, in my opinion. Not next anyways. That ain't happening. So let's erase that one out of the picture. Then you got the undefeated WBO and unified champion, Alexander Usyk. Well, it's not going to happen because he's fighting Fury. But even if let's say Fury gets injured against Ngannou and Usyk wants to make a interim defense, he's going to have to fight Hrgović, the IBF interim champion, or the IBF mandatory. So Zhang isn't going to be able to fight Usyk either. So the Usyk fight's not happening next for Zhilei Zhang. Maybe down the road. We'll see. Then there's Deontay Wilder. This fight has been discussed. Zhilei Zhang and Wilder would be an explosive fucking fight, and Wilder might take the fight, you know, not only because it's big just big in terms of the heavyweights. It's a huge fight. But Wilder might take it because he wins the WBO interim title. He could be upgraded to champion. He could fight the winner of, when the smoke clears, of Fury and Usyk. I think this fight is definitely a possibility right here for sure. Then we look at Anthony Joshua. This fight's also being discussed. This one has become a possibility right here. These two guys, you know, both big names. Joshua wants to get right back at the top, and if he beats the WBO interim heavyweight champion, even though Wilder and Joshua are talking, nothing's materialized, you know? So to go out and fight a Chinese heavyweight who has a huge following in the continent of Asia, to get a guy like him and then you become an interim champion, that means you're upgraded and you get automatically a shot, or you're upgraded to champion if the winner of Fury and Usyk do not want, you know, decide to not fight their mandatory. So this is just almost like a shoe-in, plus it's a big fight for a guy like Wilder and Joshua. So I absolutely think Joshua is a possibility for Zhang. Then there's Filip Hrgović, a rematch with him. Zhang's only defeat in his career. I've said this for a minute now, and I think it's smart. But I don't think the fight's gonna happen. But here's why I think it should happen. Because the winner becomes a super mandatory at 2 belts, and basically, say after Fury and Usyk become undisputed, say the governing bodies, especially these two, don't want to honor the rematch for undisputed because the loser has that in the clause, then the winner of a Hrgović-Zhang rematch, which is a big fight, the winner gets upgraded to full champion for 2 belts. So you automatically are a big name and have everybody at your feet, and you probably can fight the winner of Fury Usyk for undisputed, you know, in 2025 or at the end of 2024. So I think a rematch here between these two makes a ton of sense because Hrgović is avoided anyways. So why not take on a guy that you already beat, because you should be confident you can beat him again. He's hot right now. He's red hot right now after his victory over his 2 victories over Joe Joyce, and I think it makes a ton of sense. But I don't know if Hrgović is going to want that fight, if he's going to want to risk his mandatory when he's so close to the world title. So he might not. He might want to say like, hey, I won the fight, why do I need to fight him again? I don't agree with that, but he can make that argument. Then there's Andy Ruiz. I think Andy Ruiz, if Andy Ruiz is legit trying to fight a real deal big name heavyweight and he wants to make a lot of money, Zhilei Zhang is the guy. I mean, especially if Wilder and Joshua decide to fight each other and Zhang, it has to wait anyways, why not Ruiz and Zhang? I don't know. Andy Ruiz seems to be outpricing himself though, and I don't know what his deal is. So I still think Ruiz could fight Deontay Wilder, or if Wilder decides to fight Zhang, Ruiz maybe goes after Joshua. But I don't know. I think it's a fight that should happen. You know, that is a very real possibility. But Andy Ruiz has really been disappointing me in terms of wanting to actually fight solid, good heavyweights. He just doesn't seem interested in that. So, you know, at least without overpricing himself. So, I don't know. I think it's possible because Zhang's hot right now and he brings a big following. It'd probably be a big money fight for these two guys. For a lot of significance too, Andy Ruiz, a win puts him back at the front of the line because he becomes an interim champion. It checks all boxes, so the fight would make sense, you would think, but like I said, Ruiz just doesn't seem interested. I don't know, so we'll see. I do think it's possible though. Then there's Joe Joyce. Not gonna happen. A 3rd fight, why? I mean, he's knocked him out twice, so nothing else needs to be said. Luis Ortiz. If all else fails, you got 2 southpaw, hard-hitting, 40-plus-year-old fighters that can fight each other. I absolutely think this fight could happen if all else fails and Zhang has to wait around. And Zhang would have the pull to force the PBC to let Ortiz fight him. I'm going to lean towards the less likely because I think one of the other guys are going to grab up Zhang first, but that doesn't mean this fight couldn't happen if things don't happen for Zhang. Dillian White. I don't see why White wouldn't want to fight like this, and Zhang should want a guy like Dillian White. So, I mean, if the other fights fall through, the bigger fights. And then finally, Daniel Dubois, I still have him in the top 10 after his performance against Usyk. And again, I don't think Dubois would want to fight Zhang, but I don't know how you could say no to a fight against Zhang after the way he looked. So that's the run through the top 10. So for me, I think anybody could fight Zhilei Zhang except for the two fighters fighting for undisputed. I don't see either one of them fighting none. But Wilder and Joshua, if they don't fight each other, Zhang is the biggest name you can fight, and outside of Andrew Ruiz. And I really think that's like a little four-way right there that you could see. I think, say Wilder chooses Zhang to fight him, and they decide to fight each other, then I think Joshua could fight Ruiz. Well, say Joshua chooses Zhang. You know, Joshua and Zhang work out a deal for a fight. Then I think Wilder could fight Ruiz. You know, and then, you know, if they do fight each other, Wilder and Joshua fight each other, then why not Zhang fight Ruiz himself? You know, but say none of those scenarios work out. I do think the Hrgovic fight, the rematch, makes sense for Hrgovic too, because he's gonna have to wait around. So why not take a big money fight? You've been waiting around anyways, and you already beat him. And if you beat Zhang after after him knocking out Joe Joyce twice, if you beat him, especially if you beat him more convincingly in a rematch, you are automatically there and right there for a title shot for the winner of Fury and Usyk, and they probably would fight you by that point. You know, if the governing bodies, of course, haven't stripped them at that point. And then anybody else other than Joe Joyce, I think is a possibility. You know, I do. I think Luis Ortiz and Dillian White would be very, very possible options for Zhilei Zhang. You know, and the only other guy in the top 10 that was in the top 10 at the last 6 months was Daniel Dubois. And I don't think Zhang would probably fight Dubois, but maybe he would. You know, I mean, shit, who knows? But Zhang is going to get a big fight, in my opinion, for sure. And he really did himself such a service by stepping in and taking the challenge of Joe Joyce. Nobody else wanted to do it. Everybody looked at it as a stepping stone fight. This guy's old. He can't hang with Joe Joyce, the juggernaut. And he blasted the fuck out of the juggernaut. He really did. So, big props to Zhilei Zhang. I can't wait to see what he does next and against who. And that's it. That's what I got. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash the like button, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate any and all support. This is True Boxing. You've been hit with the truth.